issue the ruling on the request of the OCP E3198/48/1 and the defense Tuan Nguyen Chia request E424 in relation to the admission of documents. The Chamber has heard the submissions and responses of parties. However, the Chamber is not able to issue the the oral ruling now, since there has been technical matters in assessing to the documents in the system. So now the floor is given to the co-prosecutor to resume the questioning.
Thank you, Mr. President. Witness, I know it's difficult coming to a court in front of a lot of lawyers and judges to recall what happened during democratic Kampuchea. So I certainly don't want to confuse you with my questions. But just to summarise, you said that you joined the revolution in 1973 and you went to Angkor Chai district as a messenger to September 1975, and then from September 1975 to March 1977 you went to Kirirom district, and then from March 1977 you went to Kracha, sector 505. I want to ask you the question now relating to Tarsum, who was the sector secretary of Sector 13, and refer back to your statement where you say that he was released or removed from his position in 1977, and then you stated that Chun only held the position for a short time. And you said that when this event happened, the arrest of Tarsum, there were a series of arrests. Did that series of arrests in Sector 13 occur in 1977? Can you confirm?
That is true. After I had moved to Kracha, the sector committee was arrested. Members of sector committee were arrested. Some of them had been arrested. That happened after I had moved to Kracha. There was a series of arrests.
Now, I will ask you about some of those people that you said were arrested. But before we do that, can you tell me why Tarsum was arrested? And if I can refresh your memory as to what you said to DC Cam, and this is at E3/9647, English 0121 2270 to 71, Khmer 0097 5715, and French 0099 6555. Now, Witness, you said, in answer to this question, where was Ta Som from? Ta Som was a journalist. He was the editor of a newspaper. He was from Svay Rieng, or maybe Praveng. I don't know where he was born, his place of birth. He was connected to the former husband of Yut, Ye Yut. Oh, from Praveng. He was a newspaper editor there. My question is, was that the reason why Ta Som was arrested? Because he was connected to Ye Yut, Ye Yut's husband.
That is true. After he was removed from his task and sent to Phnom Penh, he was arrested. He was sent to Phnom Penh because it was said that he had illness. He was not arrested at his base, in fact. He was sent to Phnom Penh and arrested. It is true, like what you quoted. However, I cannot say for sure about his birthplace, whether it be in Praveng or Svay Rieng, but I know for sure that he was from the east part of the country.
And is Ye Yut Prak Yut?
That is correct.
And was Prak Yut sent from the southwest zone to the central zone and given a position there within the Communist Party of Kampuchea?
She was sent from Kampot to Kampong Jam, and then he was the Deputy Secretary of Kampong Siam, the Deputy of the sector, and it was in 1978 when the arrest of her husband took place. So she was sent to the central zone, to Kampong Jam in the central zone. Later on, before the arrival of Vietnamese, she was further sent to Battambang.
And do you know why her husband was arrested?
To my recollection, to my knowledge, but I'm not sure, it was said that he was a former intellectual or student. Since he was originally from the East, it was said that he was connected to a KGB network, so on and so forth. After her husband had been removed to Kampong Jam, he had no real tasks to perform, and at the end he was arrested.
And to your knowledge, was he arrested and released during Democratic Kampuchea, or was he arrested and killed?
He was not released, and he was sent to Cambodia. Later on, he was executed and killed. He was arrested from Kampong Jam and sent to Cambodia, and later on disappeared, perhaps immediately before the arrival of the Vietnamese, or in the end of in the late 1978.
And to your knowledge, is that why Ta Som was arrested? Because he was connected to Prak Yut's husband, who was believed to be a KGB agent. Is that correct?
To my knowledge, the Sam case had nothing to do with the KGB agents. It was said that Sam had a lung disease, so that he needed to be sent to Phnom Penh. However, when he was sent to Phnom Penh, he had no actual position or tasks to perform. He was put in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. His position and function was removed back then. It was said that he had links to suspicious activities.
To your knowledge, was he killed during the Democratic Kampuchea regime or not?
I do not know for sure. The situation became chaotic, and I was not so interested in the event back then.
Have you ever heard of Ta Som being alive since 1979?
I have heard, like what you said, but I have never seen him. In light of the conditions of his disease, he should not have survived the regime. There was no hope that he should have survived due to the condition of his disease.
And if I can, Mr. President, if I can show the witness an excerpt from E393.2, which is a prisoner list, or combined prisoner list from S21. Mr. President, if I can have that shown on the screen, there's an excerpt. I understand the witness has difficulties reading, but our officer here with the prosecution should be able to make the name big enough to see whether the witness can confirm it. So I would ask that entry number 14851 on the S21 prisoner list relating to Sam Chon be shown on the screen. Sorry, Sam Chun. Sam Chin, but the witness can confirm.
President, the chamber grants your request to facilitate the issue. The court officer is instructed to whisper the contents of the document to the witness. Whisper to the witness, but not speak through the microphone.
Perhaps, Mr. President, if I would just ask that I could, perhaps if it's shown on the screen, but I would also read it out as well, which may be easier. Witness, looking...
President, please hold on. Copper, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I object to the method of confronting a document which is not a contemporaneous document, but made up or drafted by the investigating judges. to the witness. We talked about this person at length, but I also may remind the prosecution of the answer of this witness in document E3/10622, question and answer 92, in which answer the witness is saying that this particular person was still alive. So now to have him directed have him moving in the direction of him being executed, maybe at S21, I'm not quite sure how that correlates to each other. So there's no point in showing the witness this name. He talked about it, and in the light of question and answer 92 in document E3/10622, it's also misguided.
Just briefly, Your Honour, the combined prisoner list is in evidence. The prosecution should be able to, and the defence, put information in relation to that document that the witness may be able to comment on. The defence have done it on numerous occasions throughout this whole trial using the combined list. Secondly, I think there's some confusion as to Tarsum. What the defence was referring to, I believe, at page 92, is in relation to the Secretary of Sector 13 initially, and then this witness has said in his testimony that Tarsum was replaced by Chun, and this record states that there was a person named Saum Chun taken to S21, and so it may be two people with the same name, and I'm just asking the witness to confirm whether the name that appears on the prisoner list does in fact refer to Chun, Saum Chun, that replaced Tarsum in 1977 for a short period of time. So I think there's some confusion, and the witness would certainly be able to clarify it by looking at the name. Using the list has been done on many occasions by the defence and prosecution.
President, the chamber overrules the objection put by the defense team for Mr. Nunji Cooper. The document is already in the case file, and the chamber needs to hear the response of the witness to the question. Mr. Co-prosecutor, could you put the question again so that the witness could give you the reply?
Thank you, Mr. President. Witness, in this prisoner list, combined prisoner list from S21, it states that a Saum Chun, aged 38, who had the position of Assistant Office of Sector 13, Deputy Secretary of Angkor Chait District, and Deputy of Triang, and then back to Sector 13 office in the southwest zone, and then in the economics office for 1 month, and returning to the Agriculture Ministry in 1977. He was the chief of DIM of the Agriculture of State Agriculture. He entered into S21 on the 27th of December 1978, or the 26th of December. If you look at the name on the screen, and from the details I gave you, is this Saum Chun, the Chun that you referred to that replaced Tao Sum as a Sector 13 secretary for a short time in 1977.
Witness, after I read the name, that is him. He was in Phnom Penh back then, and later on I heard that he disappeared after the arrest of Won Wait and him. That news was learned by me when I went to Karachi and back to Phnom Penh. This is true.
And did you also hear the reason why he was arrested and taken to S21?
He had links to the supposedly network. I heard that the machineries in Phnom Penh, in the state's warehouse, broke down, and later on I heard that Won Wait, the chief, was arrested, and a few days later the deputy chief, that is Chuan, was also arrested. I was in a distant place. However, I heard that there were arrests of two individuals. One happened after another.
And in September 1975 now, you stated that you moved to Kirivong district, and you became chairman of the messenger unit in Regiment 13 under Commander Pan. Can you explain why you moved from Angkor Che district and went to Kirivong district? Who ordered you to go there, and why did that happen?
I went to Kirivong with Pawn, who was in the regiment, and my uncle said Pawn wanted a close confidant, so I went to live with him around Wat Sla Pagoda before I went to Karachi. I only took a group of 12 people with me when I went to work with Pawn. Later on, Pawn was reassigned somewhere else, and I was assigned to Karachi.
And what were your functions when you worked at the Kirivong district? What did you do before you went to Karachi a year and a half later?
I was still a leader of the messengers group, and there were about 20 or 30 workers or messengers there, that is for sending logistics and delivering letters.
You stated in your interview that you were sent there because you had experience as a messenger, and you were sent to work as a messenger at the battlefront. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct, and that statement of mine is also correct, and I stand by that statement.
And in your statement, you refer to Tatom and Tartith as working in Kirivong district. Can you tell the court what their roles were? What did Tatom do in Kirivong district, and what function did Tartith have in Kirivong district?
To my understanding, although that was at Kirivong as part of the Kirivong district committee, he also linked to the sector level since he was more senior. He could be part of the sector standing committee, as he attended the meetings at the district, and he sat right to the right side of Ta Saom.
And Tatom, what was his position in the district? Kirivong?
Tatom was secretary of Kirivong district.
Yet you said that Tartith was senior to Tatom because he worked at the sector. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct, and according to my understanding, usually the arrangement in the meetings that could sit at the front row with the Saom, and the district level would sit at a different row, and that was the one who organized such meetings, and this person was also related.
And you said that your office in Kirivong district was at Sla village. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. It was at the old commune, Sla village.
And Sla village, about how many kilometres was that from the Vietnamese border?
It was closer to Vietnamese border. If you stand at Sla Pagoda, you could almost see the Vietnamese border, as there was only one district away. And the 105mm artillery could be shelled for that distance.
And about how many kilometres or miles?
to my estimate, it was not that far. In terms of the artillery range, Vietnamese could sell it from their side through Cambodia side, and it's the other way around. It's also possible. There were some rice fields in between, so the distance is roughly 15 kilometers.
And about how far was your office at Sla Village from the Kirivong district office and the offices of Ta Tit and Ta Tom? About how many kilometres was it from there?
It is very difficult for me to give you an estimate of the distance, since during the time there were no proper roads to travel. There were creeks and there were forests, and Tom's office was at Po Prik, and that was at another location, and there were forests in between. And then there were Prey Rumpok, Prey Rumdeng, and that location. So there were two communes in between, and it was rather far in terms of distance.
Thank you. Just one last question on this. How long would it take you to drive from Sla Village to Ta Tit's or Ta Tom's office in Kirivong district? Approximately.
If you travel in a direct line, it's not that far. However, the road at that time was so winding, as you had to travel here and there, and the distance was a little bit less than 20 kilometers.
Thank you. Witness, I'd now like to move to another topic, and that's the topic where discussions about enemies were had when you were at either Angkor Chai district or Kirivong district. In your statement, you talk about a meeting that you went to where enemies of the CPK were discussed. And I'd like to read a passage from your statement where you discuss this point. It's E3/10622, English 01170587 to 88, Khmer 01136-708 to 09, and I believe there's no French translation at this stage. And this is a question that was asked of you by an investigator at the ECC. Do you remember what they talked about when you attended the sector meeting? You said they talked about the summary of the yearly work. The party secretary went on the stage to make a commitment and talked about the results of serving the party, including the strengths and weaknesses. They then reported on the rice fields and the number of completed canals. And then you go on to say, in response to this question, at that time, during the meeting, did they talk about the outside enemies or inside enemies? Yes, they did. The enemies were the KGB and CIA. The CIA network was affiliated with the United States. of America, and the KGB was affiliated with Vietnam. Is that correct? Do you remember going to a sector meeting and the issue of enemies was discussed?
What you have stated is correct, and I agree with that excerpt. There were two issues that they mentioned, that is KGB affiliated with Vietnam and CIA of the America. But they did not mention about the hunger suffered by the people. And regarding the commitment that we were asked to do, that is to eliminate the CIA or the KGB agents, but they failed to mention the hunger or shortage of food faced by the people. I heard about that statement, and we chiefs of messenger groups were instructed to attend the meetings, and we had to take note of what was told or spoken. And as I said, once again, I agree with the statement that you just read out.
And about how many meetings did you go to during your time at Angkor Che or during your time at Kirivom where the issue of enemies was discussed? Was it discussed frequently? At many meetings or a few meetings? Can you give us an idea of how often the issue of enemies was talked about?
Based on my participation in the meetings with those senior people, in general, for senior cadres, this topic was raised rather often. However, the matter was not that often raised during the military meetings, as such meetings focus more about the preparatory line at the border or at the front line. So the matter was raised more with senior cadres meetings, but for military personnel's meetings, it was not mentioned that often. This is based on my personal participation in those meetings.
I'd like to read you an excerpt from a statement or a document, and it's from the June 1977 edition of the Revolutionary Flag. It's E3/135, English 0014-2905, Khmer 0006-2803, and French 0048-7719. Before I read this passage, witness, were you familiar with the Revolutionary Flags magazines that were produced by the Communist Party of Kampuchea? Did you see any during the Democratic Kampuchea period, or were you taught about the content of them during that time?
Regarding the Revolutionary Flag magazines, senior cadres actually use those magazines to teach us. This is based on my participation in the study sessions. the flag magazines were issued around 1977, and so they were used during study sessions. And this is based on my personal experience. I knew later on that the magazines were no longer published. However, they were used by senior cadres in study sessions.
Thank you. And if I can read a passage from that one of those magazines in June, the magazine in June 1977, it says, "We must hold a clear stand in view that we haven't yet cleansed burrowing enemies 100%. The remainders enjoy extending themselves. We must take absolute measure in zero-tolerance manner and without hesitation. The procedure of eliminating enemies burrowing from within expires 4 months already. Please be reminded. 1. Encourage and educate the masses in the party, core organisations, Revolutionary Army, and among the people so that they are clearly aware of how the burrowing enemies act. By this way, they will become forces in search of enemies and attacking enemies. The same applies to each ministry, base and army. We move step by step. Wherever measures of eliminating enemies are available, there must be encouragement and education for the masses." Is this the type of policy or approach that you were taught in relation to enemies during that period?
That is the difficult issue that I mentioned. It was due to the strict guidelines of the Communist Party that nobody trusted anyone. And people were afraid of the contents of the flag magazines. Even I myself sacrificed myself to the party, and I would not protest against any assignment by the party, and we would dare to sacrifice ourselves for the party, and that was based on the content or the guidelines of the flag magazines. When we joined the party, we had to be afraid of the party, and that we had to search for KGB or CIA agents. And everybody was afraid of everybody else, and we did not trust one another. People from the east were sent to other zones, and likewise people from the southwest were sent elsewhere, and the situation was rather confusing. And that's what happened, and the excerpt that you read out is correct. Everybody was so afraid of the content of the magazine. I learned those excerpts. However, your statement jogs my memory.
You said that people were afraid to protest the content in those revolutionary flags. Why were people afraid to do that?
people did not have the rights to read the revolutionary flag magazines. Even members of youth leagues or progressive persons did not have the right. Only party members could read the magazines. However, amongst the party members, we were afraid of one another. For example, my chief joined the revolution of the party before me, and later on I became member of the party. But because we were from different backgrounds, we did not trust one another. And that also applies to those who were introduced to the party by different people. And we were afraid to speak to one another or to make any comment.
You were very young at the time. I think in 1975 you said you were 17, and so in 1979 you would have been around 19. Do you think that your age, your young age, made you more afraid of the content of these policies in the magazines?
The truth is what I just said. We were afraid of one another. As for myself, I was the youngest. Usually, only when we reached the age of 25 years old, we would become or entitled to be members of the party. But I became a member of the party since I was around 19 years old.
And when it's stated in that magazine, the passage I read, we must take absolute measure in zero tolerance manner and without hesitation in relation to dealing with enemies burrowing from within. In your mind, what did we must take absolute measure in zero tolerance mean? What were they telling? What were the magazines telling CPK cadre to do in relation to enemies?
Regarding the content of the revolutionary flags, successive purges happened because of the not so absolute stance. For example, people from Dakar and Cambodia who were assigned to Karachi, as in my case, if we were not absolute in engaging in the purging of relatives, for example, when someone was wounded, then it means that we fail to adhere to the guideline or the content of the revolutionary flags. And when there were purges at the sector level, sometimes people did not take absolute stance to purge those at the lower level. This is based on my understanding.
And when you state that people in some places did not take an absolute stance in purging, are you saying that people were not prepared to kill others in relation to these policies?
Witness, please hold on, and Council Copper, you have the floor.
That's a very leading question, Mr. President. I object. Purging, we have established, is not the same as killing at all. Re-education is seen as a measure. Other forms of education is seen as a measure. So just jumping from purging to asking the witness whether absolute stance in purging means killing is very leading, and therefore I object.
Your Honour, I'm happy to rephrase the question. what did it mean for party members to take absolute measures in zero tolerance against enemies? What was being requested of party members from these teachings?
Regarding party meetings that I attended, it was for the party members to be absolutely loyal to the party. Regarding purging, if that party member made a mistake, then there would be no need to make any consultation. If myself or my group became party members, then we had to be loyal. And as for the party, we did not know who or what the party was. And also regarding the purging, it is very difficult to understand who we had to purge. It was easier for the army to engage in their activities at the battlefield, but within the parties, the purging was not that clear.
One last question, Your Honour. What did purging enemies mean to you? Did it mean to re-educate? Did it mean to remove people from positions? Did it mean to kill people? Did it mean all of those things? Or did it mean some of those things? When party members were asked to purge, what were they asking them to do?
Allow me to inform you of what I understand based on my participation in those meetings. For example, within the party rank, if there was a treacherous network, namely the person who introduced them to the party and those who were introduced into the parties would be subject to be searched for their backgrounds. For instance, even if I lived in Karachi, then they would come to my native village in Takao to search for my background. And if they found that I made mistakes, then they purged me from the party's rank. And that would have to do with CIA or KGB agents. And that was what we called the internal purges within the party, and ordinary people or base people would not be aware of such fact.
Was killing enemies considered to be a part of the purging process?
You're asking me whether killing enemy was also referred to as purging. What I said is that during the party's meetings, usually if party members were found not to be loyal to the party, then they would be purged. However, your question is rather from a different perspective.
My question is, when members were asked to purge internal enemies, would that include them being authorised to kill internal enemies? Yes or no?
It's beyond my understanding. Only the senior cadres could instruct lower cadres to implement or to take an action, and only the party knew who traitors were. Because people at the lower level did not dare to act without permission. Even people from the same village, and when we were assigned to work elsewhere, we did not even dare to speak to one another, as we were afraid that we were accused of colluding with one another.
Thank you, witness. Mr. President, this morning I think the prosecution started asking questions at 9:30. I would ask that, if possible, the prosecution and the civil parties receive a half an hour to make up for that discussion at the beginning. And so my request would be that we would finish 30 minutes into tomorrow morning, if Your Honour pleases.
President, thank you. It is now appropriate for a lunch break. We take a break now and resume at 1:30 this afternoon. Court officer, please assist the witness at the waiting room reserved for witnesses during the break time, and invite him back into the courtroom at 1:30 this afternoon. Security personnel instructed to take Kil Sampon to the waiting room downstairs and have him returned to attend the proceedings this afternoon before 1:30. The court stands in recess.